Okay, good morning. Morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Deutsche Bank for the lunch talk, right? Um, there are a few people online as well. I hope you can see me waving. So welcome to lunch talk, right? I think most of y'all are here not for the first time, right? Who's here for the first time? Oh, for the first time. Oh, for the first time as well. Wow. Okay. How do you know about this event? Ah, okay. Yes. So it's working. Uh, yeah, yeah. But then I'm gonna ask another question. Who has attended our brown bags in the past, like last previous 2 years, for example? No, all here for you have? Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay, yeah. Um, so let me just share a little bit on the context of what all this are about, right? For Caring for Life, so I'm Alex from Caring for Life, the executive director of the charity, and also one of the founding team members, lah. Our focus is really on suicide prevention. Okay. Yes, it's a very deep topic, right? And most of us are kind of look at this from a distance, but yet it's something that pretty much happens in all around the world, right? In Singapore, we're looking at an average of one suicide death per day. But why are we doing this? Because we look at suicide prevention from two angles. One is if a person has suicide ideation, how do you prevent a potential attempt? We will have a program for that, right? But at the same time, we also look at something from upstream in a sense of suicide resilience. Or what can you do beforehand to even reduce the likelihood of suicide ideation, right? Hence, we look into well-being, wellness, and we've been doing this kind of initiative for many years now, right? Previously, when we did it in Deutsche Bank, we call it the brown bag session. It was 100% physical. Um, there was quite a lot of feedback that the content was really good, but not easy lah to to make it on lunch hour, right? So we hear that feedback. That's why after some discussion with Deutsche Bank and of course with their strong support, they allow us to now screen this online. So there are quite a few people on Zoom. And to people on Zoom, you can participate as well. Along the way, when the panelists are sharing their thoughts, if you have any questions, just pen it in the Zoom chat, right? And likewise for all of you, right? Later, just if you have any questions, just note it down somewhere. There will be Q&A as well, right? So this is what we have been doing, and we will try to cover as many things as we can. This year, this is actually our third session. First session was on AI and mental health. Very interesting stuff where we have panelists from MOHT, Ministry of Health side, and also Total Wellness Initiative Singapore to talk about the impact on mental health by AI and what are some of the telltale signs, such that if you are using AI in this way, it's time to talk to someone, for example. Right? This content is on our YouTube channel, right? So if you're interested, you can just go and watch. And if this is something that speaks to you, please share it out. Last month, we had this topic on the balance between caregiving duties and work duties, right? On how do you balance these two and the stress that comes with it. Very popular as well. Hi, yeah, we meet again. Happy New Year. Yes. So again, very hot topic. But if you have missed it, go and check it out. Pretty much most of our talks nowadays, we always have it recorded, right, and put online as well. On top of this monthly lunchtime talk, we also have a monthly community mental health webinar as well, where we cover all the other topics that's more for the general public in that sense. Last month in February, we covered on sleep. Really good stuff. I learned a lot myself. Sleep optimization, and we invited this doctor from ENT clinic to talk about this. And we have one coming out, of which I'll be sharing all this later. So my point here is we are doing all this as an upstream effort towards suicide prevention, right? So if this is something that speaks to you, notice that all this session is actually free of charge. So do continue to come, right? And please share with your network as well and ask them to come as well. Yeah. So you can scan the first QR code if you're interested to our YouTube channel to access all the contents we have there, and we will continue to upload new stuff, including today's session, right? And also, if you want to be notified with some of the new events that's going to be launched, you can scan the second QR code below on Eventbrite. Because you are here, I'm going to give you the first-hand information. We have a lot of good stuff coming up that's not on Eventbrite yet. For example, in September, we're going to have our second run of the Community Suicide Prevention Summit, right? We're going to touch on many different topics relating to suicide prevention. And we want to deep dive into different demographics and the challenge and the works for them. For example, for person with disabilities, we'll be looking at migrant workers, etc. Right? So do just just follow our event page where you see the announcement, you see it. You'll be in September. Also another one that we'll be doing in collaboration with SUSS. This is in October. It's going to be on arts and mental health. Also very good stuff in my opinion, right? When it's confirmed, we'll put it on the page lah, right? But these are some of the things that's coming up. Okay, next. So just a gentle reminder that this session will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. During the presentation and discussion, no questions will be taken, but just pen it down. And for people on Zoom, you can put it on the chat first. There will be a Q&A session, and that's where we will invite the audiences to ask. Please take this chance to engage. Right, today we have, in my opinion, pretty awesome panelists. I'm putting them on the hot seat to answer all these questions. Please ask all the questions that you have as well. Do check out the things that I brought with them later. I'll ask them to elaborate as well, right? And if you have any feedback, suggestions for future topics, or even interested in being our future speaker, please write into me directly to email. Happy to discuss this as well. CFL, we really have quite a lot of platforms now to do this kind of talks and sharing, because our intent is really to advocate. At the end of the day, for Caring for Life, we are an advocacy agency when it comes to this kind of topics. Next. Yep. Okay. So this one, who knows that in March, this month is actually Self-Harm Awareness Month? So now you know, huh? Okay. We are testing this out in the sense that you really don't see a lot of discussion in open platforms of self-harm. But I think all of us here are quite familiar with that concept, right? So we actually have two talks coming up on the 14th March and 28th March. Day one is by Dr. Kelvin Ng from IMH about understanding self-harm in children and teenagers. So we're looking at the prevalency and various different mental health that are associated to it. Day two, which is the 28th March, is on emotional and physical first aid from Miss Leon from Shine. Okay, so this is free of charge as well on Zoom, 2 to 4 p.m. So if this is something that speaks to you, please join us, right? Otherwise, just continue to share. This content will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube. So if you missed it, it's okay, right? But just continue to journey this with us, right? And continue to keep ourselves equipped as well. See a few scanning, so wait a bit. Yeah. Okay, next. So for Caring for Life, who here has heard of our live training before? Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3. Not bad. Oh, okay, good. So live training is actually one of our trademark program, which is a 4-hour suicide prevention program, which you will learn how to identify early signs of suicide ideation, and then how do you bring this person to safety. This is designed for everyone, okay? And all of our live training is actually fully sponsored. As of December 2025, we have already trained more than 4,000 people. This year, we are aiming to train 1,200-ish. So if this is something that speaks to you, do join us, right? We have one coming in April. Actually, we have a lot, but many of them are fully filled. So the next available one for public is April 18th on a Saturday, 2 to 6 p.m. on Zoom, right? You can scan the first QR code to register directly, but if you can't make it, but you want to follow and where are all the other dates, you can scan back to the Eventbrite, it's all there, right? Or as we continue to launch, sometimes we might have vacancy from some existing programs, right? Then we also will put it there as well, so that anyone can do a last minute sign up if you are interested. Yeah, next. Okay, this is the this month's community mental health webinar. It's going to be about overcoming procrastination and professionalism. I don't know about you, but this is something that I definitely need to learn. Right, and this is by Dr. Richie from NTU. When we spoke to her about this, she said, "How much time do I have?" And asked her why. She said, "Because I can talk about this topic for days." So I said, no, you only have about 1 hour plus, right? So if this is something that speaks to you, do join us, right? Next one. Otherwise, in April, I think this one is also quite relevant. We have someone from Focus on the Family on parenting across developmental stage. We have a lot lah. We have a lot. So just come, okay? It's all free online. If you cannot make it, it's gonna be on YouTube anyway, right? Just keep on following, right? There's a lot of very interesting topics coming up. Next. Yeah. I think I talked about this already. Okay, next. Okay, so today I'm not the star, right? So I shall stop talking already. To be honest, today I think it's really a privilege that I'll be able to speak to these two individuals. They have been in the mental health sector for a very long time now. I've learned a lot from each of them respectively, right? And I'll leave it to them later to share their stories. But I believe that today's topic is something that is often overlooked or taken for granted, right? Even in words like emotion. It's something that we think we understand, right? Maybe we do, but also how do you manage and how do you catch yourself when you are not, right? These are some of the things that we often take for granted, right? So we want to visit that today, and I'll try and push this topic a little bit, right, to see how far we can go, so that we don't just touch the surface lah. Sorry, I didn't know I'm gonna do this. So so first I'm gonna invite Miss Sujata as our first panelist. A round of applause for her, please. Then please take a seat. Yeah, I might as well. You all right? And our second panelist, Miss Shane. A round of applause. Thank you. All right. Okay. But if we cover such a broad topic with no context, I feel that we might be just, going all over the place. So I'm going to set the tone a little bit. If you go to the next slide. Okay. So this particular poster and all the stats has been compiled by one of our volunteers, Charmaine, she's over there, right? Pretty awesome stuff. So I'm going to run through the chart a little bit to set the context of today's conversation. So in 2024, there's actually a Gaosao report on the states of workplace mental health in Singapore. Okay, so the first one is on the state of mental health report. I'll just point out specifically, if you look at the daily stress, you'll see the chart. Yeah, we are quite high lah among the various different countries that's listed, right? And also, if I move to the center, we talk about the 4 factors affecting mental health in the workplace. As I list them, see which one speaks to you, okay? The first one is work pressure, right? So we talk about those deliverables, right? KPI, etc. Second one is long hours. Third is lack of gratitude. And number 4 is toxic environment. Right, so these are the 4 factors that came out in the report. I see a few nodding heads already. Okay, but I thought it's also quite interesting to move on to the next point, right, which is the proposed solution from those who did the survey. So 4 of them. One is access to 10 or more benefits, right? So we're looking at HR benefits, R&R, for example. Yeah. Number 2, periodic and brief mindfulness therapy. Third, creative positive events at the workplace. And number 4, which to me is something that's very interesting, very simple, but something that we take for granted, expressing gratitude. Yeah, so again, we are doing all this because workplace is something that takes quite a significant proportion of our life, right? And if anything affects you in the workplace, oftentimes it does cascade into our personal life as well, or social life. Right, so that's why I thought this is a very fitting topic today on the idea of emotional intelligence and empathy. We'll be covering in the following points. Number 1 is understand and manage your emotion. So we'll talk about that, right? Visit a few points here and there. Number 2 is recognize and respond to others' feelings. Right, I'm going to ask you about difficult situations, especially, right? When let's say if your boss is the one that you need to respond to. Then practice empathetic listening and communication. And last one, build trust through respect and consistency. Okay, but before we go into those topics, I would like to invite each of my panelists to introduce yourself, right? What's your experience like in this overall mental health landscape or any of the stories that you'd like to share with us. So maybe Sujata?
If you see on that table, there is a book that I have written. It's my autobiography. It's called Against All Odds, No Retakes, No Manuals, Real Life Lessons. And like I say jokingly, except for being murdered, I've covered it all. If I was murdered, obviously, I wouldn't be sitting here and talking. But, mental health, as I have said, happens throughout our life because it's the environment that we are in. It starts with family, it starts with our surroundings. Obviously, it starts school, colleges, it starts with workplace also. So it's a continuous actually journey where we have to work on overcoming the challenges which contribute to mental health and well-being. And that is my journey, which I have covered in there. So you can ask me any question on any matter, I can talk.
Yeah, I have a copy of a book. I've read it. I think it's one of those situations where your resilience is built through all the personal encounters and stories as well, and you use that to continue to advocate. So hopefully later we hear more of that as well. Yeah.
So maybe I first started out 10, 11, 12 years ago, and I remember this story that created an impact on me, and that's why I'm convicted to do what I do today. When I left the corporate world to go and find myself, like YOLO, right? I went to do this training, and I remember that I had to go. There was 2 days. First day, this student wasn't there. Second day, she was there for half the time, and then after that, I realized that she was most of the time in the sick bay. At the end of the class, I invited them to share, like every single person get a chance to share, right? And she said this: "I've learned that the class can bond without me." So that was like a red flag for me. I invited her to sit with me after the session and went through some of the handouts, but there was something that she said, right? I said, okay, describe life in 2 words. She said unpredictable, couldn't come out with another one. And then I decided to go into a different track and said, if you can describe life, what would that be for you? She said happy. And she started to cry because 8 years ago was the last time she was happy. That's half the life. And as we went on sharing, listening, this individual had forgotten what makes her happy. And she said, you know what? I had a boyfriend once and he was very good because he listened. That statement alone made me realize that actually maybe everyone needs that listening ear. And if I could put that listening ear out there for as many people as possible, with the empathy, I could make a difference. Because this individual, 6 months later, I had a chance to go back in, and she was a completely different person. In January, she said, there's no more time to make friends, and how can I ever make friends? To someone who made friends, was able to stand in front of people and be confident to share her story, she said, I'm so much happier now. Thank you. Because of that, I've learned that being able to provide someone with the empathy and that listening ear is so important. And if we can enable more people to do that, we would. So because of that, we went on to pilot in different places, whether it's with secondary school students, with IHLs, with corporate, in the community, with PWDs and so on. We tried. And repeatedly, the answer is the same. Everybody wants that safe space to feel they belong. And not just in Singapore, we also try in other countries. So that's the journey that I've been on.
And later I'll invite you to share more about some of the programs. Yeah. But let's just start with the point that you shared earlier, because recently I've been quite interested in this whole idea of what we call emotional fatigue, right? Where for many of us, we may relate to this point where we felt like we have gone through so much anger, so much rage, so much pain, so much stress, until to the point that we just start feeling numb, right? But some of us might probably mistake that as a sign of strength, whereby, oh, I don't feel as stressed anymore, for example. But what they don't realize is that there's also the other side where they don't feel much joy anymore. Yeah. So, and this is something that I don't have the numbers for this, but it's something I definitely do observe, especially among the working adults, right? Or maybe slightly older, especially those who are in what we call the sandwich generation as well, right? Where we are going through so much that we not only do we not feel the pain or the anger or the stress, but we also don't feel the pleasure and the joy anymore. So just want to start with that as the point, right? On this whole idea of what does it mean by understanding your emotion, and also the next point on managing it. Because there's so many different tools out there, right? So many different angles out there as well. So what are some of your thoughts? And if I were to ask you to share with us any skills that you know of, what would that be? Yeah.
Okay, so in my journey and why I do this is because I had nobody to listen to. So when you're in a situation, you might be picture yourself in a desert with nobody around. What do you do then? So to survive and to move forward, you have to self-manage your emotions. You have to self-regulate and make the choices. So whether, like when I started my career as a housewife, I had nothing, no resume, no nothing. I just had a bachelor's degree. But I decided to look for a job. And can anybody guess what kind of job would a 33-year-old housewife go for? No right or wrong, just anything that comes to your mind. Okay, any more? Okay, so what I did was I went up to a guy and I asked him for a job in sales and marketing of computers. And that day I realized that I have something called confidence because I was able to take rejection. At best, I told myself, what would I hear? No, still no harm in trying. And it was the shortest interview of the break of my career when the guy said, I can give you the job, but your boss will be a guy much younger to you. Are you okay? I said, I have no problem. That's how I landed my job. So, what I'm trying to say is, you will be alone when you make life altering decisions, but that is your strength, which you have to develop. You have to always operate as if there is nobody there. And today, I'm happy to say that I'm everybody's 2 a.m., 4 a.m. friend because I want to be that listening person for anybody in the world, which I never had. That is one. I would like to touch on another this one because that is will tell you this is one aspect. But what later on I did was in this journey of mine was that I decided to fight for justice when my daughter was raped some 10, 11 years back. And I went to court. And the world ostracized us, but that's the decision that I took. And I went through it. And I can tell you it is extremely lonely, it is extremely hard. But if you work on yourself, then you can persevere and go through it. So these are the things. You can have many tools, but at the end of the day, it all starts with you.
Maybe I'll just deep dive on that a little bit. I mean, I'm sorry to hear the encounter that your family has went through, but also hear the point on how you felt lonely, right? This whole pursuit, and I think while we may have gone through different situations, some emotions are shared across. So, for example, some of us may feel deep loneliness at times as well, right? So how do you manage? Because you say about focusing on ourselves, but what do you mean by that?
Okay, so for example, I had to be the strong person, right? I was fighting the case. Hello? Yeah. So it's like this. When I made the decision, I had to see and accept that nobody was going to be there for me. I had to be the strong person because I had to be strong for my children. So you cannot cry in front of them. You cannot tell your husband who has to go to work. Men are taught not to express their emotions. So he had to be in his job and pretend nothing has happened. And it's not something that you walk into the office one day and tell your colleagues or your HR, oh, my daughter got raped and I'm not really up to it. You have to do that. So what I'm saying is that you have to tell yourself, if somebody helps me, fine. But if not, then I have to go through it. It will only build resilience in your character. And the people who actually were the listening ear were the most unexpected person, who I call human angels. It was only the senior cops and random strangers who came to my rescue. But if you have to go for 6 years, sit in a court, every single hearing, trust me, it's not easy. I had to sometimes wear adult diapers because I used to suffer from stool incontinence, but it didn't stop me. I knew I had to finish this, and I knew I had to do it for closure. I wanted that my daughter should never look back and think she was ever guilty or it was her fault or whatever. So it didn't matter to me whatever society did. But if you read my book, I also met God in Barcelona, a spiritual experience. And that is also a very powerful story.
I really resonate with what you said about how many would reach a state where, I used to call it a Zen state, because many people would think that they're in a Zen state where they're not impacted by a lot of different things, right? But it's important to be able to differentiate when you are in a real Zen state versus when it becomes a coping strategy that has been overly utilized. Because I've met quite a number of people who would say, oh, nothing bothers me. And to be fair, I was in a state like that before, until I realized that actually this was me trying to stay functional. Because there's just so many things that needed to be done, right? But actually, the longer term impact of that is the emotions cannot stay in there forever. At some point in time, it will come out in different ways. So it might come out in different symptoms, right? Or it might end up just, you crying at different points in time and you're wondering what's going on. And then that's important, because that's a sign. So what helped? Number one, I think, is having the people around you who will be able to point out for you. So I would say the people who are especially powerful are the people with that gift of being able, what I call emotional empathy. Now, when we talk about empathy, there's many different kinds of empathy, right? The cognitive empathy and so on. But the ones who are able to feel or sense you, those are the powerful ones, because that's data point in an intangible way. So last year, I was in a burnout phase. But of course, having to, in the office, don't want to show so much, right? Because you have to be functional, you have to show up in that particular way. And we ran like a growth circus. So a growth circus is one where you create a psychological safe space, people practice skill sets with one another to support each other. And then someone in my team was saying, I'm noticing that there's a particular emotion in this room. So the fact that someone could sense that already made me kind of connected, like someone's noticing me. And honestly, when someone points out your emotion is kind of like it's opening up the floodgate, right? So then it takes a lot to pause. And then questions came in, or to just check in, okay, what has been going on? So it allowed me to have that space to share and to notice. And then after that came the encouragement, like what you said. Because why we react that way is also tied very closely to what's important to us and what we value. And in that point in time, what led to the burnout for me, not the first time though, has been a lot of like critical self-talk, where you end up blaming yourself for a lot of different things that may or may not be within your control. And it requires like the team of people around you to then tell you, don't be too hard on yourself. It's not the end of the world. And to kind of like take you on that journey. And that's really important, because before that, I was trying to manage that on my own. And it's actually not easy. You can't just say, okay, self-talk, keep quiet, that's it, let's go. Because it's like a volcano, right? You can keep putting things in there. Okay, show of hands here in the room and maybe online too. How many of you, when you've gone through like a certain emotion in that day, you get busy for like the next 1, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then you come back to think about the incident that made you unhappy, and you're like, oh, don't feel anything anymore. It's okay. Move on with life. Yes? Okay. When we do that, the challenge is we have not dealt with the emotion. And the emotion actually stays within us to fester. So that the next time a similar incident happens, you will find that you get triggered even faster. So then the same emotion intensifies. And then we deal with everything else around it and not our own emotion. And then it will just get worse and worse until a point where you feel like, I can't do anything about it anymore. You might go down into that coping mechanism of going to that Zen state because it's like nothing matters anymore. Or if we are very aware of ourselves, maybe we can start pausing and saying, hey, this strategy did not work. What else can I do differently?
So what are some of the what else, right? Because we talk about we need to manage it, right? We need to deal with it. So how does that look like?
Yeah. So there's this game that we created just because we noticed that. And like over there, this game called Bintastic. Actually, if you want, you could do a quick play over there too after this talk. So what we found is that each of us, okay, let's try, okay? Let's try. Now, imagine that you have been, okay, imagine that you are leading a team for the first time. Not first time, you're leading a new team, right? What about leading the new team would cause you stress? Yeah? May not need to share, but you want to share as well, that's fine. Anybody? Okay, a lack of clarity. Someone else wants to share? Okay, not knowing. Okay. Misaligned agendas. All right, so you're hearing that in this room, 3 different persons sharing 3 different reasons. Then it's important for us to go to the next level, right? What is it about, knowing the strengths or the agenda and the clarity? How is that important to us? What is it that you would want to do with that information? And go much deeper, because when we can break that down, we can start figuring out the essence of what we need. When you're not given that need, that's where it causes stress. So I'd like you to, everybody, reflect on what that deeper need is. And now think of a different situation where that need was not met. Were you feeling stressed, or did you feel more of the emotional reaction? Yes? Now, that is important because that will be a common trigger. Now, the question is, how did you deal with it? Now, over here, there are actually 5 coping strategies that we have found, right? Some actually cope based on being active. Some of us, they might cope by needing to have the inner peace, so they go for a walk. Now, imagine if I was your teammate, and imagine that the way you all cope here in this room is wanting to problem solve. But then I say, I'm going off for a 5 minutes walk. I'm going off for a walk. And then you see me disappear and I'm just gone, because actually that's how I cope with my stress, right? I just needed space. But on your end, you want to see problems being solved. You're like, this person has just disappeared. What are the thoughts that you have of me as an individual? Maybe anger, maybe different things. Now then that becomes an issue because I would now have caused you stress. But because I hear you and can sense you breathing down my neck, you as a teammate will have caused me stress. Now, what can we do to enable this situation to be better managed?
Walk together, solve problems together. No, I don't know.
Yeah. So yes, at the end of the day, we want to align, right? Solve problems together, but we need to arrive at a level of understanding with empathy that your way of solving the problem or dealing with this is that you want to problem solve really quickly. But my way of problem solving this is I want to problem solve, but unless I get like that breather, that 5 minutes, 10 minutes of space, I would not have the bandwidth to deal with this because I'm overwhelmed. So if we have that communication at the workplace where we can share this openly with each other with the empathy and understanding, then this could be dealt with. But my question would be, how often do we do that with our team members and our colleagues? Do we also know what signs to look out for and how everyone is managing stress?
I think that's a great segue to the next point, right? Because I see a strong similarity between both your sharing, and that is that the importance of the community, people around you, right? You mentioned about those unexpected ones, and you talk about how empathy becomes so important, right? And do you know how to recognize? Right? So maybe I'll just start with yourself first, right? So what are some of the signs that we should recognize that might be common, for example, in the workplace, given today's context, but happy for you to explore others later as well. And maybe later I'll come to you in terms of, you talked about those unexpected people, right? So what were the signs that they recognized and that you felt it was very, really helpful at the point in time? Maybe I start with you.
I think it's very important for us to notice any changes in persons because you work closely with your team. You're able to see if there's any mood swings or any changes. So if it deviates away from what you notice them as normal, then it's what I would say, practice noticing and then sharing and then asking. So for us, when we have this training, right, called the Art of Relational Leadership, and one framework that we teach there is called NASA. NASA is notice. Like, are we able to notice someone when they have a different reaction and then actually share that back with them to then ask what's going on? And I think that's really important because when we can do that, we can explore so much more instead of jumping to assumptions. Because maybe, say for example, now this is not work-related stress, but I'm going to ask you to just view my face, right? How many of you, like, let's say if you just ask a question and then you see me doing something like that? You saw my facial expression? What are the thoughts that came up for you? Okay, not the right time to ask. Someone else might have a different interpretation of it, right? Oh, say someone asks a question and then you're like, it might be dismissive, right? Now, different interpretations of a face. What's important for us is to say, I noticed that when I asked that question, you had this reaction, this facial expression. I'm wondering what's going on. This is important because anything that I might have an intention, but it will have been misperceived or misinterpreted by people, and then that leads to a lack of then communication. But then maybe my response is, oh, when I have this, it's because it's a really good question and this is my thinking phase. Then that opens up a different piece. Of course, if they have other thoughts like being dismissive and all of those, this is a chance for them to actually recognize that they were doing this so that they can catch hold of themselves. Because unless we have a mirror around, we carry along with us all the time, we probably don't know this is how we look. So if you are a leader or we are working with a team, it's important to also catch our facial expressions, right? But same thing here, apply that when it's supporting one another. Notice what's going on in their face and just check in. So in my own workplace, I can tell actually when my different team members are going through something because you can see like the minute changes on their faces, or I can sense a little bit more of like the difference in the energy. And what's important is just pause them there and say, hey, I'm noticing something different about you today. How are you feeling? And it can make a huge difference to the energy and increasing motivation at the workplace.
This is a very interesting part because I have mentees from right from 12-year-olds to 70-year-olds across the different sections of society. When I do any kind of team thing, what I do is, because everybody has a different personality, everybody thinks differently, right? So if we want to have an open kind of this thing, you set it at ease by asking them to say how they feel, what they feel through a questionnaire, which will give me an idea as to who is what, or how they think. And that is what I do. So I keep a very neutral kind of this thing and allow people to open up. The other thing in my personal capacity, like you said, how people come up to me. It is always the same. I recently came back from Bangkok, Thailand, where I'd gone to attend a UN event. And my modus operandi is that in any event, if anybody knows me, I always go quietly in one corner and sit. And invariably, somebody will come up and say, why are you sitting alone? Then I say, I'm not sitting alone now because you've joined me. So something about silence, and if you have something which people can figure out or feel drawn to, they will come, and that's how the conversation will start. And it always does, because there are all types of people, right? Some are shy, some are quiet, some are reserved. You don't know. And not putting people in boxes or judgmental thing is something which I follow strictly, because if for example, if I, like you said, look at, there's a lot of emphasis which actually society tells us, to look at non-verbal cues, how you're sitting, how you're talking, and what is your expressions. I always tell them, don't focus on that. Focus on the person, what they're saying. Try to gauge the essence of the person. When we had COVID, we couldn't see each other, right? We could not see, but how did we listen to each other? We listened, right? Because we were listening, actually listening to what was being said. Now what happens is we are listening, but a part of us is also judging the people based on the physicality of the appearance, their ways of how they are interacting and all that. So that is what I say, that don't focus on all that, because to me I feel that if we start listening to people's opinions, judgments, we'll end up with split personality disorder, because we'll be trying to always live up to people's expectations of how they perceive us.
I wanted to add on that, right? If we can all achieve that, I think that would be awesome. But it's actually so hard to do that.
No, it is hard to do that, but
Yeah.
each one can be promoted to be themselves. Because empathy, I feel, is in truly listening to what somebody says without judging. But if we are going to, look at these kind of things, then we are going
Yeah.
to.
So I would say that one strategy to enable us to do that is, can you self-appreciate yourself? Because if we can't even appreciate ourselves, then we are actually drinking from an empty cup. Because it's kind of like, and the reason why we all want all this affirmation is because we grew up in a society where from the moment you are born, your parents are like giving you all this affirmation, which is great because it's focusing on the process. But then at which point in our life did that become an if this, then this? We all know when that point is in our life, right? Now, but then because we didn't get the same kind of affirmation from our parents, when we go into the education system and so on, we end up craving for it. That's why for those of us with teams, you might always hear people saying, how come we don't get that affirmation? You only get the criticism. And that's because they want that affirmation, right? So it's like, if I can keep pouring all this, getting a cup full of affirmation from everyone, but it's leaking because I cannot appreciate myself, then there's a problem. The point of us being able to accept and receive affirmation is when we can just pause. I'm going to ask everyone today, how can you appreciate yourself?
Yeah. We have been discussing or chatting for about half an hour. There's really quite a lot of, really a lot of good gems in there. I will be opening up to the floor for questions, so just prepare your questions first, right? But you can see this is why it's so important for us to have this session recorded, right, and be made on YouTube, so that we can always, share with others, continue to converse. There's so much that what you both of you have shared that takes, to some extent, practice, right? So that you can build up that part of the muscles, right? So that when things does arise, then you know what to rely and respond to. Yeah. Okay. So questions from the floor and from the Zoom as well, please. Anyone? Yes.
At the workplace, let's say a person is being traumatized by the boss, and being traumatized lasts a long time, the emotions is deep. So how would you cope with this person who is so, worked up and couldn't even sleep, or heartbeat very fast, could not sleep, and all kinds of things happen, and then it affects the whole family for years?
Well, if it's a case of 4 years, then I think this is actually going down a therapy route, right? If we have to check in on seeing what is the stage of the mental health. But if this was something that was done, something happened recently and it hasn't gone down the mental health spectrum, I would say have the conversation with this individual sooner than later in order to process the emotions. This also happened recently for myself, right? It's because someone listens to what is being said, digests it, and interprets it in their own way, and it escalates for them. because they might not understand the full context or the reason behind what's being said, and then it becomes an issue. So if the leader, the best is if that leader and the individual can speak directly, maybe mediated by someone as well. That would be great, because then they can understand both sides of the equation and understand each other. Because usually it's a case of like, if I'm standing here, if I'm the individual, right, I'll probably see that I'm here and my boss is there. We're looking at each other. But what's most important is that I need to be able to stand beside my boss and see what the boss is looking at. Same way, my boss needs to stand beside me so that we can see that number 6 is 6 when I stand here and number 9 when I stand there. Only then can we de-escalate the emotions. Because if it's an emotional thing, the most important thing that we need to do is not go into problem solving. It's to deal with the emotions. So yeah, if the individual is currently still feeling that way, I think it's good to actually have the safe space being set up to let the person process and say, what is the issue, what's going on, what about that impacts this person today? Because it could have gone down to impact this person at the core, very core of the person's values, and the identity and self-esteem of the person is now very shaky. And that's why it's impacting the rest of the person's life.
I just wanted to check. You've gone through a lot, both of yourselves. So, what is your personal philosophy, or the way that you are, or want to be, or have become, that guides your interactions with different people?
So my personal philosophy, ever since I was growing up and facing challenges, is very simple. I need to understand who I am, and I need to live with my conscience. So even if it means that I don't adhere to certain protocols or dictats by society, I am going to still go forward. And if it is not acceptable to some sections of society, that's up to them. As long as I'm clear of what I'm doing, then I'm going to, persevere. It's going to be very hard. It has been very hard and challenging. But I can tell you one thing, it does give me a sense of, calmness, because at the end of the day, I look at people as to how they are operating. For example, if somebody is nasty to me, it's not necessarily they are nasty because of me. It's something which is going on with them, which they are taking out on somebody else, which is very often the case. Because in workplaces also, like, one must understand, you have toxic bosses, right? It has got nothing to do with your competency level. It's sometimes and very often to do with biases. What do you do with that? You are doing your job, you're doing your numbers, but still your boss doesn't like you just because you're performing. What do you do with that? So while you have to live with it at times, you have to tell yourself it is not about me, it is about them. And so when that you can remove, step aside and let it be a part of your thinking, then you will feel triggered when somebody is obviously acting nasty beyond a point. You're going to get triggered, but in the long run, you'll be able to overcome it. So my thing is very clear. I will do what I need to do. I'm very clear. If my purpose in life is to help people, then that's what I'm going to do. Those who come to me, they're welcome. And those who want to put me in a box or do anything, that is up to them. It doesn't define who I am.
And for me, I would say that I look at everyone as equal. And this also came from my time when I was in China, and I realized that with different nationalities, different people from all walks of life, I noticed that there's one thing that we all want in common, and that's a place to belong. And of course, beyond belonging, everybody's looking for growth. So, of course, apart from sleep and money, these are the two key things that people look for. And then I started to recognize that actually this is what we need to look at in terms of the common humanity. That if we look at DEI, for example, diversity and inclusion, what makes DEI possible is when we stop looking at differences, but to see what the similarities are. So that kind of guides me to say that, okay, you know what, in everything that I do, we are all fellow human beings wanting the same thing, and we can only get there when we support one another. So one key thing is we come as fellow human beings, no titles. That's my philosophy. The second one is if we come as strangers, let's leave as friends, because we all need an additional friend to support and to be supported. And these two, over the 12 years of me running the social enterprise Growthbeans, I have found to be very, very impactful throughout, when you can create that space, the psychological safe space for people to just be without titles. Especially especially when we talk about titles, right? The higher up we go, the lonelier it gets. It's because people view us as a title. But actually, beneath the titles, we're also a fellow human being wanting the same thing. After that, beyond that part, it's about the space that we have around us where we can just be. So that's why we call it growth beans, right? Not because we are in planting or anything, or we sell coffee, we don't. I mean, maybe one day. But it's because beans are easy to grow, only if there's the right conditions. So we believe in the human potential of every single person, that if we have the right conditions, we sprout, we grow, we create a garden, we flourish. And that conditions is tied to the connections, the space, whether we can practice some of these skill sets for one another to grow. That guides me. So today our mission and vision, the vision of the company is to have everyone grow, connect, and care with self-awareness and the social skills. Because self-awareness and the social skills are lacking, and actually with AI and tech and using our devices so much, we actually have less and less of that. And you will find that the behaviors are people are going on ChatGPT to discover more about themselves, but GPT is a danger zone where we do too much of that, because it could tell us to do things that are very unhealthy for us.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Any question from the floor? Okay, yes.
You, Sujata and Shane. Hi, Shane. Sorry, I'm very sorry to hear your story, and I'm also very inspired. So thank you very much. I'm just curious because so many of the words that have been thrown about lately, it's like dysregulation, regulation, affirmation, validation, mental health, and I'm in that space as well. I'm wondering where these words came from, because if you see, work hasn't changed that much except with the introduction of AI. At least AI is taking over jobs, kind of thing. So there's a lot of stress. Is this the stress that we're putting upon ourselves? Are we merely attributing those internal systems or the inability to manage ourselves, and then we're saying it's external? Because a lot of things have remained that way. Toxic bosses are always going to be there, toxic environments, KPIs, metrics, everything is already going to be there. But what are we doing to ourselves, or what have we been doing to ourselves to actually increase our stress levels and anxiety levels? Thanks.
Okay, so like I say, technology has advanced, but we as human beings have not really progressed, not in our mindsets. We talk of these, buzzwords and jargons, but nothing has changed. Like you said, toxic bosses. It's not only toxic bosses, it's toxic family, dysfunctional families. It's, the school environment where there's such a lot of stress and pressure, not only for the curriculum, but for children to do that. Nobody talks why should children be bullied and harassed and contemplate suicide, right? But that is happening, and we don't talk about it. We don't build caring societies. That is the thing. That one level we are going faster than this thing, but on the other level we are not. And unless we as society change our mindset, it always starts from the time we were born. When we are born, girl, boy, the color combinations we are given, the gender specific toys that we are given, we are supposed to go into certain careers that we are supposed to go because of our gender. That has not changed. It might have progressed a little bit with some families and some people, being progressive in the outlook, but not, it's still a far way to go, right? Like I was telling somebody, I was telling her that, when we talk of, say, example, you talk of celebrity chefs, right? What comes to your mind? They're all men, right? When it comes to fashion designers, they're all men. But inside the family, do those men ever do any kind of household work? Tell me, how many? Are we, we are so many decades old women's organizations, NGOs and all. I don't understand why we have never asked that the housewives should be paid a salary. We do two jobs. As a wife and a mother, it's a lifetime job. Trust me, even if your children are 40s, if you are alive, you are expected to be a parent and do parental duties. Okay? And you're not appreciated and all. I give you an example. If you have a husband who does cooking, cleaning, and all this, people will say, "Oh, what a good husband you have! He does all this work." Excuse me, but we have been doing all our life the same jobs. We never got appreciated. We don't get. I asked my men friends whose wives, educated guys, right? And they are my good friends. And I asked them, why doesn't your wife have a bank balance? Sujata, don't put ideas into her head. Number one. Secondly, they'll say, "Oh, but we give her everything what she wants." I said, "What do you mean by that? You may take her for a holiday, you might give her jewelry or something as a gift. That's not enough. Do you give her that human dignity for just giving her an allowance for the work that she does day in and day out?" All my single friends, tell me like this: you think you are very good, happy, and lucky. It's we who single are lucky. We don't have to get up in the morning and do anything if we don't want to. You have to. You have to make the breakfast. You have to do the cleaning. If we don't feel like, we don't work. We don't get out. We may get up whenever we want. We can go see a movie. We can go to a cafe, have a thing. We're not answerable to anybody. We can go on holidays. But ask the housewives, even today, in modern day, do they have freedom of that sort? What do you think? We work 24/7. Now with all this technology thing, we are working overtime also. Work-wise also, so many Zoom calls, so many this, so many that. So where is the time that you have for yourself? And then you want, we should all be, this kind of a personality and that kind of a personality. And we should not be overwhelmed or should not have burnouts. What is all that? Sorry, you gave me a chance to speak, so I just thought I should take the opportunity.
No, but the thing is that my wife is here, so I think she's benchmarked me with against all those metrics. I think I made most of them. I hope. Yeah. Yes.
No, I was saying that I did this research years ago, right, on subjective levels of well-being. So we are comparing people who are not married versus married couples versus single, and the results are true.
Yeah. And by the way, whatever I say with evidence-based, because I have a husband who used to do this. He used to cook, he used to clean, he used to look after the babies, and I always had to hear. But nobody talked about Sujata, who, went and did all kinds of things to be a model daughter-in-law, things which I never wanted to do, never agreed. But I never got a medal for it. I never got any appreciation for it, nothing. It was always, he's such a good guy. Yeah, he is a good guy. He's also the best salesman in his work profession. So he will have his $1 million smile and you will fall for it. And just because I don't smile, I might be serious. So you think all kinds of things. Anyway, not to do with me, as I said.
My response to what you were asking, I think it's about the sense of control. Because whoever we speak, it's about whether they feel that sense of control for them versus things that are out of control. So even if it's, say, at the workplace, things are changing, but do we feel like we have that sense of control to manage the change, or are we just told you have to do this or else? I think in terms of how the communication is being made, it also makes a difference, because I think people do want to keep up. Sometimes they are not sure how or whether they can find that time or how to manage that. So a bit like what you were sharing earlier on, like what's important is like the clarity. Do they have the clarity or the process or steps? Because unfortunately or fortunately, Singapore is a very structured place that the moment there is change, when there is no sense of structure, we kind of lose a bit of the game. So it's about seeing how we can put that into a structure for people or giving them that sense of control. Because the world is actually in a bit of a frenzy of no control. But the most important thing then is how do we anchor ourselves to some of that? And if we can't do that with what the world is, then the most important part is anchor yourself to know that you have your strengths, no matter what.
So with that, we have come to the end for today's session. Just a gentle reminder, do come forward to check out Sujata's book, Against All Odds, right? And also Bintastic. And can we flash the PDF as well? Shane, would you like to share a little bit about the program? Yep.
So the program that's going to be shown up here, it's actually something that we have launched at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. It's something that we have also been running on a regular basis in the outside. And this part actually teaches us the steps, the exact steps on how to build psychological safety, which we know it's sometimes very difficult to do it. And over here is actually the practice using a web app to facilitate it, to manage conversations and empathy. This process, we've run it in the school curriculum for students to practice, for psychology students to practice before they come out, but we've also used it at workplaces. And when they have been using it at the workplaces, you do see the differences in the culture, but people support one another as well. And this might, of course, magic doesn't happen in a day, and soft skills you don't practice and master in a day. So it's about creating that process and time for people to practice in order to achieve that. And we have seen great results for the companies that have come in to run this, or even running in the community. But over there in front, there are actually 4 cards. Then these are like 4 very important skills, basic skills that we all should practice, although we might not always remember or know how to do that, which is what we teach also to get us to recognize first, are we actually listening correctly? Are we asking questions in the best way? So 4 cards over there, come to the front and take that or bring some back and give out to your friends so that you can tell them, oh, I really like to acknowledge you because you're someone who encourages a lot.
So sorry we overrun a little bit. It's supposed to end at 1, but now 1:05-ish. But I'm sure we all agree that there's been quite a lot of takeaways. Can we just go straight to the last slide for the PowerPoint? Right. So I think I've shared enough at the front of what are some of the upcoming activities. If you're interested to scan the QR code later, just come forward. Happy to share. But we do need your feedback, right? And also include any other topics you hope to hear from this event in the future. Or if you're interested to become a speaker as well, just let us know, right? Happy to explore. But I think there's been so much takeaway today. It's been a very precious opportunity for all of us, and really a big thanks to Sujata and Shane, right, for all the sharings. So to everyone here, right, please do remember to continue to stay well, take care, right, and please remember to self-care as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.